Very warm welcome. I'm Alexandra. I'm the leader and creative director of City of London Sinfonia. And today I'm chatting with the composer, Dobrinka Tabakova. Thank you, Dobrinka, for joining me and giving your time.
Thank you. It's so good to see you.
It's lovely to see you too. Now, in the autumn of 2019, the orchestra undertook a little tour of cathedrals across the UK, from Truro up to Liverpool. And we performed two of your pieces, in fact, in the concert. But the main event really was the last piece, in which the cathedral choirs and the orchestra came together for Centuries of Meditations, which you'd composed. And I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about the piece and about the inspiration behind it, please.
Oh, well, the tour is something that I've admired, that the City of London Sinfonia have been doing for a number of years. So friends of mine like Gabriel Jackson have been part of it, and to be part of that program has been just fantastic. I think it's a really great idea, and just such a nice spotlight on all of these amazing venues, and very apt actually for our times. You've got all the space of the large cathedral, and you can walk around it. It was a really, really special concept and tour to be part of, and I managed to come to two of the performances in Liverpool and in Truro, and Truro I have a lovely connection with already. And for you to choose the Centuries of Meditations was even more special, because it's a really special piece for me. It was written for the Three Choirs Festival in the year that the festival was at Hereford, and the piece was commissioned for the festival. The inspiration was the newly installed lights windows in the Audley Chapel of the cathedral, made by the amazing Tom Denny. So, as if by magic, I have a few postcards of those lights, so that they all represent different aspects of the work of Thomas Traherne, who was a local poet and mystic, 17th century. And Tom Denny took four of the main themes of the writings of Traherne in a collection of Centuries of Meditations, he calls them, the title of the piece. They are 100 meditations on how we as humans can find happiness in our lives. And so the first one is nature. So there's this kind of really vibrant green with, I don't know if you can see it, there's a figure somewhere. There's a figure kind of running through the fields. And it was just such a, it's so vibrant, so green, so full of life. And so the first movement of Centuries of Meditations with the music that I wrote was using text from Traherne about nature, and inspired visually by this kind of really vibrant green. And then the other movements, faith and love and community. And one of the best parts about the piece was just reading through Traherne's writings. They're so uplifting, so warm, so positive, and also in the times that we're living through now, I think there's such good words, such wholesome and optimistic, sort of light-finding words. And they were very inspirational, and it was very important that I was consciously writing for a young choir. It was the festival choir, which was made up of choristers from all the three cathedrals of the Three Choirs Festival. And then to have the choristers of the cathedrals of the City of London Sinfonia tour perform this, again, this kind of vibrant youth optimism, hopefully believing in a brighter future kind of approach, that was really, really special.
Well, it was a beautiful piece, and we loved performing it. It took on very different characters as well in the different cathedrals we went to, a different life almost in each cathedral. But it's the first time that I've seen the stained glass windows, and they are really stunning. Yeah, absolutely stunning. find that other works of art, or maybe poetry or pictures or buildings, often inspire you when you're composing? And if so, is there like a particular source that you might return to, you know, one that you know is always going to fire those creative juices?
Yeah, oh, well, so many things. I think with anything creative, we try to channel a really distilled passion of what we do. So whether that's in architecture, whether that's in painting, for me, an important inspiration is actually a landscape gardener called Piet Odulf. He's from the Netherlands, and his work is just so recognizable. He's like a guru of the gardening world, and so sensitive to the seasons, the seasonality of planting. So the first time that I was in New York, not the first time, but about 10 years ago when I was in New York and discovered the High Line, which is now a tourist attraction, but back then wasn't particularly well known. Immediately I recognized Piet Odulf's signature of the grasses and the seasonality and letting plants just sort of have their full cycle of life. And it ended up being the inspiration for a piece that I wrote about the High Line. So there's inspiration everywhere, absolutely.
And once you have that starting point, is there a sort of a main focus when you're composing? Something that perhaps you obsess about getting right, making sure it's perfect? Or does that depend entirely on what you're writing and who you're writing for?
Oh, obsession is a dangerous word with composers. I think we all have that little demon inside us. But for me, it's a lot to do with structure. I feel very conscious that I'm responsible for the time that a performer or a listener is spending with my work in my oral world. So I feel very conscious of trying to get a strong structure. Either it's just very clearly defined or sort of has symmetry in it, or the exact opposite, to have something that goes completely from one beginning into and transforms into something completely different. So to have that kind of outline of the work is really important, and then go in with the material, with the details, with the shaping, the development. But for me, really the first step is structure.
And is there a particular composer who has made a big impact on your musical language, or maybe that you just really admire? Perhaps you love listening to their music, but they haven't necessarily sort of permeated into your language as such.
Many. Asking a composer, who is your favorite composer?
Yeah.
An important composer for me is Messiaen, just for the scope, the transcendentality of the music. Again, I think it's very honest and very direct, but at the same time quite abstract at times. The harmonic language is, for me, absolutely divine. So I adore that kind of sonority. And so in terms of the sound world, he would certainly be one of the main sonic inspirations. Structurally, probably Xenakis, who notoriously was an architect to begin with. So that sense of structure and of order in the music is just so audible. And I had the great privilege to meet him as well. So that, yes, in France at a summer school. And I shall forever remember that meeting, and it was very special. So despite the fact that my music is very different to his, I admire him very much.
Now, I may be completely wrong, but I imagine that kind of your composing life in lockdown is not dissimilar from normal life? I mean, maybe not punctuated by as many performances, but in terms of the sort of daily creation of music, it stayed pretty much the same. And I'm sure those listening or watching would love a glimpse. I would love a glimpse into the daily life of a composer. I mean, do you have a routine, a structure, or is it sort of something you do when you feel you've got an idea? Yeah, please tell us what goes on in the life of a composer.
What I find the most challenging is switching gears from I guess, external and more extrovert life to the internal life of creation and composition. So for me, that's the constant struggle as a composer, and something I'm still discovering how to do for myself. Because on the one side, you're at rehearsals, it's very busy, you're explaining, you have to be very open. And then on the other side, creation, for me at least, is very internal, very private, very introvert work, and having this and that constantly changing in normal life can be quite tiring and draining. And I've been talking to some of my colleagues who I guess maybe have an office job and 9 to 5, 5 days a week. And I remember the first few weeks that we spoke, they were like, I can't find a rhythm. I don't know what to do with myself. How do I get back this 9 to 5 again? Again, I guess maybe it's the structural thinking that I'm personally quite obsessed with. And it took them about 3 or 4 weeks to find their rhythm within this new reality that we have. And I'd say that's very similar to what, at least for me, composition is, to find your rhythm back into creation. And that can take weeks really of just sort of slowly shutting the world off and then finding a really concentrated space. And then it can take months to be within that space, very little communication with the outside world, not much of a social life, but sort of constantly sort of working at your material and tearing things up and throwing them away and then going back in. I'd love to say that I have a really set routine of doing things a certain way, but by the time you've come to be that concentrated, I can work through a 10 or more hour day straight.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And just really concentrated. But to reach that point, it's almost like a kind of reaching a really deep state of meditation.
Yeah.
And it's really intense. And and then slowly weaning yourself into normal life again. So it's not, I'm not sure it's probably the most practical way of working because it's so antisocial.
But it obviously works. I mean, gosh, you've written so many amazing pieces. Are you working on something particular at the moment?
Yes, I've just there's been a string of a few percussion pieces, one as part of the BBC Postcards from Composers project, and then another one for a friend of mine, Joby Burgess, for a tour that he's doing of a number of percussion pieces. So there's been a percussion focus, and then I'm completing a concerto for orchestra for the BBC Concert Orchestra, with whom I'm resident for the next season as well. So I've just completed the second movement, and I'm working on the final movement at the moment. And then there's a string of other things that I'm trying not to think about at the moment. I'm not very good at writing 4 or 5 pieces at the same time.
No. But is there something in there that you really want to write and you haven't yet been asked? I mean, maybe, I don't know, an opera or whatever, but is there that piece that you're just waiting for someone to say, please, Dobrinka, can you, or that a person even that you're hoping one day commissions you?
Oh, well, I feel very lucky that I've worked with musicians who inspire me greatly and who we have an ongoing relationship with, which is, for me, very important. Once you find out about the performers that you're writing for, that's just the beginning. Then you can explore more and write and stretch them, and they can stretch you. So it's only the beginning. So I can't say that there's been anything. I guess I try to make every project the project I would like it to be, if that makes sense. So
Yes.
I'm not massively excited by opera for me to write at the moment. I think that the libretto has to be spot on, and it has to be something that really resonates and is important. So not that at the moment anyway. But yes, I love writing concerti, love writing for soloist with an ensemble. So if the more of those that I get to write in the future, the happier I'd be.
It's been so lovely to talk to you, Dobrinka. Thank you. I thought I'd just end by going back to the Cathedral Tour. You mentioned that we try quite hard to make the concert experience a little different, in that the audience were encouraged to move around and maybe take a cushion with them and relax and enjoy the amazing architecture, so that the building almost became part of the experience. And I wonder if, you know, in a perfect world, what would be your ultimate concert experience? Maybe venue-wise, maybe in format, or the music being played. Is that an evil question?
No. Well, in a strange way, the Cathedral Tour was one of my...
You don't have to say
yes. No, seriously. I like being able to move around, and I like how sensitive the audience was to everybody else's experience, which I think is really... there's a poignancy to it, that, you know, it's not just your own enjoyment that you're responsible for, and it's not just the musicians that are responsible for the experience. You as an audience member have that responsibility by just enjoying it for yourself and being aware of others and moving around and exploring beautiful spaces. Amazing. The other thing I really enjoy is just being in the outdoors, being somewhere that's not closed, roofed, but I mean, there are weather implications with that, of course, and acoustic ones, which trying to get a beautiful acoustic in a massive open space is a very difficult thing. So there is no perfect answer, which is why I think a cathedral is just, it's like a massive forest, really. So it's a beautiful space, and it has the acoustic, you're not being rained on, and you've got the space. So yeah, perfect.
What a wonderful image on which to end, the forest, the cathedral forest. Thank you again, Dobrinka, for joining us, and please don't work too hard, not too many of those 10-hour stretches.
Oh, don't worry, I'm having a good time as well. Thanks.
Thank you ever so much. It's lovely to talk to you.
Likewise. Thank you, Alex.